There are secrets hidden in classified documents, buried deep within government archives and religious institutions. Secrets that could change everything we think we know about life and death. Reincarnation has long been dismissed as superstition or a religious belief. But what if real-world evidence has been deliberately erased from public knowledge? What if powerful organizations have studied it, documented it, and then concealed the findings to maintain control over what people believe about existence itself? Throughout history, certain cases, research papers, and first-hand testimonies have surfaced, only to disappear again just as quickly. From declassified intelligence reports to suppressed scientific experiments, the evidence suggests that reincarnation isn't just an ancient myth, but a phenomenon that has been observed, studied, and then locked away from public discussion. Today, we are uncovering the files that were never meant to see the light of day. These are the reincarnation cases and documents that were deliberately kept from the public. 1. The case of Shanti Devi, the girl who remembered her past life in India. In 1930s India, a young girl named Shanti Devi began recalling vivid memories of a past life as a woman named Lugdi Devi, who had lived and died in a distant town. At just 4 years old, Shanti started describing details of Lugdi's life, her husband's name, the town she lived in, and even the exact house where she had resided. Her parents were initially skeptical, but the girl's detailed recollections were so accurate that they decided to investigate. Shanti's case caught the attention of a local researcher, Dr. K.K. Verma, who, after verifying her claims, led an investigation to the village where Lugdi Devi had lived. When they arrived, they were able to confirm that Lugdi's family, house, and life story matched Shanti's memories with eerie precision. However, rather than making the findings public, the case was quietly suppressed, as it posed serious questions about the nature of the soul and reincarnation. The investigation was kept hidden for decades, as authorities feared the implications of confirming reincarnation in a society already bound by strict religious and cultural beliefs. 2. The reincarnation of James Leininger, the boy who was a World War II pilot. James Leininger, an American boy, began displaying disturbing behavior from a very young age, including nightmares about a plane crash. At the age of 2, he started talking about being a pilot during World War II. His parents were initially shocked when he described specific details of a plane crash, including the name of the aircraft carrier and the location of the crash. Over time, James's memories became more specific, and he even identified himself as James Houston Jr., a US Navy pilot who had died in a plane crash in the Pacific during World War II. James's parents were stunned when they investigated his claims and found that a pilot named James Houston Jr. did indeed die in a crash on the exact aircraft carrier James had described. Despite the overwhelming evidence supporting his memories, the case was largely ignored by mainstream media, and much of the documentation surrounding James's story has remained suppressed. The public and military interest in the case was quickly shut down to avoid opening the door to the larger conversation about reincarnation and its implications on modern understanding of the soul and identity. 3. The mystery of Dorothy Eady, the reincarnated Egyptian priestess. Dorothy Eady, an Englishwoman, claimed to have been a priestess in ancient Egypt during her past life. As a child, Dorothy exhibited an unusual fascination with ancient Egyptian culture. At the age of 3, she began speaking in hieroglyphs and displaying knowledge of Egyptian customs and rituals. This led her to a deep interest in ancient Egypt, and as an adult, she worked at the British Museum. Dorothy was convinced that she had lived as an Egyptian priestess named Seti during the reign of Pharaoh Seti I, a time nearly 3,000 years ago. Her detailed knowledge of Egyptian history, architecture, and rituals stunned experts, many of whom were convinced that she had lived a past life. However, despite her profound knowledge and claims of visiting her home in Egypt, where she provided details of the tomb she had once tended, the story was kept out of the limelight. Dorothy's case was downplayed by both the public and academia, as it challenged accepted views on history and the continuity of consciousness after death. Her extensive work was dismissed as mere obsession or fantasy, and much of her life's research into past lives was buried in academic archives. 4. The past life of the Tibetan monk, the case of Tenzin Khedup. In Tibet, the story of Tenzin Khedup, a young monk who claimed to have been a revered spiritual leader in his past life, was quietly suppressed by local religious authorities. Tenzin Khedup, as a child, began to exhibit unusual behavior, including spontaneous recognition of sacred sites and ancient texts. At the age of 5, he started speaking about his previous life as a lama who had passed away many years prior. His memories were not only specific, but also included references to advanced spiritual teachings that he could not have learned in his current life. As Tenzin's story spread, the Dalai Lama and other high-ranking monks investigated the case. They verified many details, including his past life's name and his previous position as a prominent spiritual leader. Despite the confirmation of his past life, the findings were not made public, as the religious authorities feared the consequences of revealing that reincarnation was being actively documented in Tibet. The case was suppressed to maintain control over religious doctrine and prevent any challenges to the traditional understanding of spiritual leadership and the reincarnation cycle in Tibetan Buddhism. 5. The CIA's secret reincarnation research. It's no secret that the CIA has investigated unusual and highly classified topics, from mind control experiments to remote viewing. But hidden within declassified files is something few have paid attention to: evidence that US intelligence agencies have taken reincarnation seriously. A leaked report from the 1980s confirmed that the agency explored the phenomenon of past life memories, especially in children who could recall highly detailed information about lives they never lived. One of the most compelling cases involved a young boy who claimed to have been a World War II pilot. He described everything in exact detail: the name of his aircraft carrier, his missions, the way his plane crashed, and even the names of his fellow soldiers. Investigators later confirmed that every detail was accurate, down to classified military records that the child could not have had access to. The CIA quietly filed the case, and instead of further public investigation, the topic disappeared. The real question is why? If reincarnation could be proven, it would fundamentally disrupt how society operates. It would challenge ideas about religion, justice, and even government control. If people knew they had lived before, would they obey the same political and religious structures? Would they fear death in the same way? The suppression of these files suggests that those in power prefer the world to remain ignorant of what might be the greatest truth of all: that life does not end at death. 6. The USSR's classified reincarnation experiments. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union invested millions into paranormal research, believing that supernatural abilities could be weaponized for espionage. What is less known is that Soviet scientists also studied reincarnation, not for spiritual reasons, but as a means of retrieving intelligence from past lives. The goal was to see if certain individuals could recall useful knowledge from their previous incarnations, military tactics, scientific formulas, or even the locations of hidden assets. One chilling experiment involved a girl from Leningrad who, at age 6, began speaking in fluent German, despite never having been exposed to the language. She provided detailed accounts of life as a Nazi officer in World War II, describing classified operations with stunning accuracy. Soviet officials, instead of dismissing the case, quietly documented and studied her recollections. They even tracked down records confirming that the officer she claimed to be had indeed existed and had died under the circumstances she described. Rather than making these discoveries public, Soviet authorities classified the research, sealing the files indefinitely. If people could recall past lives, it could open doors to new levels of intelligence gathering, but it could also raise dangerous questions about identity, free will, and what truly happens after death. For a government built on strict control over its people, the idea that consciousness might be eternal was not just a scientific mystery, it was a political threat. 7. The Vatican's hidden texts on reincarnation. Deep within the Vatican archives, there are countless texts that have never been revealed to the public. Some researchers believe that among these hidden documents are records proving that early Christianity once acknowledged reincarnation. But those teachings were erased from history. Before the 6th century, various Christian sects, particularly the Gnostics, believed in the soul's journey through multiple lifetimes. Certain biblical passages even hinted at the idea of past lives. But during the reign of Emperor Justinian, the doctrine was officially condemned. The Vatican systematically removed references to reincarnation from religious teachings, ensuring that followers believed in a single life followed by judgment, an idea that solidified the Church's power. Why suppress the concept of reincarnation? Because if people believed they would return in another life, they might question religious authority. They might focus on personal spiritual growth rather than fear-based obedience to institutions. The Vatican's refusal to grant full access to its archives suggests that there may be much more to this story. Texts, accounts, and doctrines that could change how billions of people view their existence. 8. India's government-backed reincarnation studies. Unlike the Western world, India has always accepted reincarnation as part of its cultural and religious foundation, but what most people don't know is that the Indian government has conducted scientific research into past life cases, some of which are so shocking that they remain classified to this day. One of the most well-documented cases involved a young boy in Uttar Pradesh who claimed he had been murdered in a previous life. He named his killer, described his former home, and even led investigators to where his old body had been buried. Shockingly, forensic analysis confirmed that a murder had taken place at that location, matching the boy's testimony exactly. His killer, still alive, was later confronted and reportedly confessed. The implications were enormous. If reincarnation could be proven, what would it mean for the justice system? Would past life memories be admissible in court? The Indian government has acknowledged such cases, but keeps many of its official studies sealed, possibly to avoid the disruption that would come from legally recognizing reincarnation as a reality. 9. The US military's interest in reincarnation and remote viewing. Most people are aware that the US military experimented with psychic spying, also known as remote viewing, during the Cold War. But what few realize is that some of these programs also explored reincarnation, particularly as a way of retrieving lost knowledge. One such case involved a top-secret experiment where subjects were hypnotized and guided into past life regression. Some participants recalled vivid memories of historical events with eerie accuracy, describing lost artifacts, hidden locations, and even ancient languages they had never studied. Military officials took these accounts seriously enough to investigate certain claims, and in at least one instance, the details provided led to the rediscovery of an ancient structure in Egypt that had been previously unknown. Instead of continuing public research, the findings were classified. If reincarnation could be used as a tool for intelligence gathering, it would be too valuable to expose to the general public. Today, most official mentions of the experiment have disappeared, leaving only fragments of leaked reports and first-hand testimonies. If you have made it this far, comment down below with the word 100% to confirm that you have received the knowledge from this video. For more interesting topics, make sure you watch the recommended video that you see on the screen right now. Thanks for watching.